Hey everyone, I'm Kunal Bajwa.
And I'm Lance Jordan.
We are two nerds who decided to start a podcast in 2020 due to the pandemic. No topic is necessarily off the table, and we'd like you to join us in hearing our thoughts on various topics, ranging from anime to Zeppelins. We have it all. Here we go. Hey guys, thanks for coming back. How's everybody doing in this fucking heat wave in St. Louis? It's hot as balls out here, but you know, it's good to see you, Lance. Makes the day.
Great to see you too. Glad to be back. Glad to be here. You know, talking about some interesting shit that we got going on.
Yeah, this kind of like, now that I think about it, it actually flows into our last episode decently, because a lot of the stunts are, you know, all over Hollywood into the topic we're talking about today, which is we're fucking tired of all of the comic books and superhero movies and TV shows and everything.
Yeah. I mean, being tired, yeah, I guess that's the correct word for it. Because I don't think we're done.
No,
yeah, exactly,
we definitely don't hate it.
But I think you can, at least for me, I think it's definitely come to a tipping point, if you will. Like,
yes,
the glass is full on some of these stories and, yeah, just the genre in general.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the water has definitely been filled to the brim with a lot of things. It actually, like, it just feels so oversaturated to me. And it always reminds me, like, whenever I hear something like this is just at the tipping point or too far up ahead, it always reminds me of, like, the 1980s video game crash. There's a quick history bite. Essentially, like, video games were huge. They were hitting it. They were doing great. And you could throw out a video game, have it be, like, halfway decent, and make a killing. Like, it was ridiculous. The one thing that killed the crash was the infamous E.T. game, known as doing that. And then eventually Nintendo comes in later and revives the entire thing. But that's a story for a different day. It's all over Netflix.
Every streaming service has their own superhero.
Oh my God.
Story.
And exclusively for it. Yeah. You have to get it for just to do all that. So that's a really good point. On the other hand, it brings a lot of underrated comics to the forefront. Like, I would have never heard of Invincible.
Yeah. Umbrella Academy.
Umbrella Academy is another great one, yeah.
The Old Guard just got announced for a
sequel.
Second movie, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that one. That was actually a fun movie, yeah.
Yeah, some of those, like, Why the Last Man is getting its own TV show. I saw the trailer for that not too long ago. Some of those are a little bit better and kind of escape what's happening for me, because you look at, well, let's take Why the Last Man, for example. I don't know if you've heard of that comic.
I have not. I was going to ask you about that.
So basically, just a quick rundown of that. It's a story about, you know, this virus that kills off anybody with the male chromosome.
Shit.
All men die except for one man. And so it's a world kind of led by women.
Whoa.
And the women basically trying to figure out what happened, how did this happen, and then, like, how to keep the population running without men. But for me, that escapes what's going on now with superhero movies, well, comic movies in general, because it's a plot that doesn't really revolve around the guys in tights.
Okay.
So that's why I say, like, that and a couple other ones, maybe like Walking Dead, for example, even though that's got played out for different reasons.
Yeah.
But, you know, they don't deal with the typical superhero. We don't get the typical superhero origin story that we see time and time again. Just rehash with a different, you know, power.
I mean, a great example, either they change it up here and there, they move around things. I mean, like, a great example is going to be Spider-Man.
Yeah, because there's been 3 Spider-Man.
How that I remember off the top of my head. Like, Tobey Maguire,
Andrew Garfield,
and
now Tom Holland.
Wasn't there another one? I feel like there was another one, or there's just been that many movies.
I think it's just been a lot of movies. Now, if there was a TV show, I know there was like a Japanese Power Ranger version of Spider-Man.
I did remember that. I don't think anyone knows about that except for nerds like us.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was a goofy one. Basically combined Spider-Man with the precursor to, like, Megazords and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, check it out.
I think for me, this all began, there was a bit of being tired of movies that I knew wasn't going to work. Basically, like with the X-Men it had got to a point where they were just like, you could tell it was done just for money.
Oh my gosh. And to be fair, like, it doesn't survive without money. Like, art doesn't survive without, someone paying all the bills for all of that stuff. But it became too much of like the suits dictating everything when it came to like art studio execs dictating like what will be successful. Because what will be successful is an important factor to have.
Oh, yeah.
But it's become the leading factor.
Yeah.
And that is problematic when you're trying to keep on to fantastical stories that, for me, in a lot of opinions, only work on an animated feature or in comics. Like, it's so hard to translate that to live action screen.
Yeah.
Until we have better either technology. I'm not even talking about CGI, just in general, better technology to capture that spirit, essence, and everything there.
And I think what happened most recently that really did capture superhero comic essence really well was the end of Endgame, where you were able to bring Thanos' army versus all of the Avengers. And I think, for me at least, after having a moment like that in not only comic history but like cinema history, I think afterwards you have to take a look at what else are you going to put out that's going to be able to, for a lot of fans, capture that feeling, like to give you those same chills. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the same chills, goosebumps of that scene.
I mean, just thinking about that scene gives me goosebumps because, like, I definitely favored it in my YouTube videos.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I play it whenever I'm feeling like I need to, gear up or anything. You're talking about escapism. I mean, it's a perfect thing for right now because of COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just like, after that, where do you go?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, at least as a fan, I'm kind of lost and kind of done because, and this isn't a diss to any of the superhero movies, but you go to, Black Widow and Suicide Squad and you look at these films and it's just like, I feel like at least as a fan, it's still in the back of your mind, like, but this doesn't top Endgame.
Right. And the phase of Marvel movies that we have seen started in 2008 with the Iron Man movies. And even before that, I had seen superhero movies. Yeah. Like, they didn't necessarily do probably as well as when that phase started, but they were around. We definitely saw Batman growing up. We saw the bat nipples. Like
the legendary bat nipples.
Legendary bat nipples. And I got my fridge recently fixed, and the guy used a heating gun to melt all the ice in the freezer. And I talked to him like, this reminds me of Batman Forever. Like, this is ridiculous. And, it's had a lot more faithfulness to the source material. And who doesn't want to see Cap talk to T'Challa or hang out with Peter Parker? Like, who doesn't want to see, like, that's what hell, that's an improv scene in the first place. Like, why wouldn't you want to see that happen? Like, what would they go to get? Like, getting shawarma at the end. I'm having so many flashbacks now. Yeah. Just talking, like, getting shawarma, you would totally want to do that with Thor, a god from another part of the realm and everything, just to see what they had to talk about. It's just so you're never going to get that chance again.
Right.
So the crossovers, like, I can't believe I'm feeding into it right now.
Like, it brought something definitely to the fans and the audience to have a connected universe, because I think beforehand it was all disconnected.
Yes.
And it really didn't serve the comic fans, because I feel like we knew what it could be if, Batman and Superman teamed up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for a while it kind of seemed like it wasn't going to happen. And then we get into the world now where we'll get, a Batman movie, we'll get a Superman movie, and then it leads into, Batman and Superman, and then it leads into Justice League. I think just now it's just like the journey that we have to take to get there. It's getting a lot, just because, especially on the Marvel front, because now it's like you have to watch every movie to stay connected.
And they do a good job of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's the thing. Like, even if I'm not psyched for it, I will end up just watching it to stay in touch with everybody. Because, like, I initially was like, nah, I'm not going to watch WandaVision. Nah, I'm not going to watch this and that. And then I'm like,
you can't afford not to.
I can't afford not to. And, like, then I'm like, oh, fuck, these are actually really good. And then it's like, but it's more stuff I have to add to the list, more stuff I have to do in there. Like, Loki came out, and they've already confirmed it for a second season.
Yeah, and it's a way to get you to buy in and to buy into their services, because you talked about earlier, like the corporations getting money off of these things, because it's like now you have to get Disney Plus because you got to watch the shows, because the shows now are going to be so connected to the films.
Yeah, and like even if you don't want to watch it, even if you don't watch the miniseries, you can still watch the movies and get everything you need to know. That's what's cool about Marvel, is that they do it enough to where like they explain everything in one like part of the dialogue, and it means more if you've seen the TV series, but it also if you didn't see it, you can be like, okay, I can get through this movie.
I think
that's cool. I think it's good writing, honestly.
One point to that, I will say, I think there's like one side I'll disagree with, and then there's a side what you're saying is true, because like we take Civil War, for example, and introduce Black Panther. Yeah. But I feel like when you go see Black Panther movie, you really didn't have to see Civil War to understand what was going on.
You really didn't. You just had to know his dad died, and
they do that. Yeah. They tell you that. But I feel like some people, because I have like a lot of family members, or I have like, or you go on these dates and they'll go to a superhero movie, like, but I didn't see that one. Who's that guy? Right. Like, because you take them to see Civil War, and they might know like Iron Man because they're like, oh, I loved Iron Man. Right. But then like they don't follow Captain America movies or the Thor movies. So
and it kind of flips too, because if that's the first time we see the second time we see the Winter Soldier. And if you saw, we're almost like defeating the purpose of this title. But if you saw the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which became Captain America and the Winter Soldier, then you have more appreciation for Civil War. You have more appreciation for Black Panther, because he spends time in Wakanda and learns how to speak Wakandan, and interacts with Dora Milaje, which. One of the best fight scenes in that whole thing that I just enjoyed, of just both of them watching the Dora Milaje kick the ass out of the new quote unquote Captain America, and then just drinking whiskey. Like, should we get in? Like, nah, just give it another 10 seconds, and then we'll step in.
Yeah, it kind of does feel like we're fanning out right now.
My God, I'm fan guy and holy at this point.
But then there's I don't know, because
no, you do know.
We get to this point of like we get disappointed because we see these reboots, right, or like these continuations. Like you go, like you talked about going to see Snake Eyes, and even with the new Mortal Kombat film, I would put that in there.
Yeah, I mean, like the reboots lately have just been unequivocally like horrible, and you can have a good reboot. You can have a good, like, people don't believe me on this, but you can totally have.
I don't believe you. I haven't seen it.
You can totally have an action movie, a martial arts movie that has a good story. Like Mortal Kombat, I will say this till my dying breath. Like, it has a level of craziness to their story that makes Game of Thrones look kind of weak sometimes, because there's so much of it. Like, there's another one that I was talking to the school's ninjutsu instructor, and he mentioned this movie to me. He's like, Street Fighter Assassin Fist. And I had heard about it. It was like a YouTube series for a while, and then they compiled it into one movie. Yeah. One of the best movies I've ever seen. Action-wise, story-wise, it contextualized it in a lot of ways. And they did a really good job of watching that. It's like a couple $1 on YouTube. You can totally watch it. Yeah. Really good action scenes, really good story. Everything I pretty much wanted. Like, I actually was ready for the next continuation, but I think they canceled production after that.
I think what you're alluding to, though, is what happens when there's things made by fans versus made by the corporation or the casual person. Yeah, because I think that's an important thing to remember, too, and I always talk about this with people whenever we have these debates about superhero movies or how they're going or why this happened, why this didn't happen. We have to remember, too, that these movies, I feel like, aren't made for the comic book fan.
Yeah, but I also... Because you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Because I feel like it's more of a... How many butts and seats are we going to get? Because they know...
Yeah, you have to make money on the product you pour into. And that is... I totally get that. But the first Avengers movie did the great job of getting fucking nerds and frat kids into the theater, and they killed it. That raised the bar for so many more of their movies and comic movies in general.
You're right. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
But you know who did it better?
No.
I feel like Black Panther, and I'll say this.
Sure,
this was a conversation back in the day.
Go for it. Like, I want to hear it. Yeah.
Because we know comic book fans are going to go see Black Panther because Marvel is so connected. And even if you're a white guy who doesn't really give a fuck, you're like, I got to see it because it's connected to the bigger world.
Right.
And you knew you were going to get the African-American population.
Yeah.
Who maybe they're not comic book fans. And now you have Black Panther being one of the top selling Marvel movies because you're just pulling in different audiences.
But it makes me think of something that I'm really glad you reminded me. It's really weird being a POC nerd.
Mm-hmm.
Have you definitely? I don't know if you felt this, but I definitely have.
Yeah, because it's
seen as like a white person's thing.
Yeah, because
which is very odd.
Because you'll get into these debates of like with other people of color who'll get into this world who won't have the same. Well, they won't appreciate certain characters, or they'll take away from certain characters. Like I know Captain America's one.
Yeah.
I had a recent like kind of thing with where it's like, oh, I don't watch those because if you really kind of think about Captain America, the white guy, black sidekick.
Yeah. It's tropey as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard as a person of color because it's like, but in the, you don't really think of it that way because it's like in the comics, that's just, I mean, it's kind of how it is. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
It's almost like defending an older relative in a family that was just born in a different time.
Yeah.
Like I love Captain America. I really do.
Right.
People look at me weird whenever I say that. But I'm like, nah, he's actually much more of a darker character than they think he is. Like there's like throwaway lines.
There's layers.
There's throwaway lines from like Nick Fury's like, I read those reports and you did some stuff that would make me hard to sleep at night. And Cap was like, well, I had to do them. I had no other choice. Yeah. And they never bring it up again. There's like a goofy thing with Thor. He's like, hey, Steve Rogers, I'm writing an email to you. Why didn't you want to tell me about those people you had to kill that one time?
Yeah.
I'm not doing much. Like, there's some dark shit that's just kind of thrown off to the side about Cap. But in order to keep this point going, it's very weird. I've been told many times, like, oh my gosh, you're so white for this when I was younger.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I would get 100%. That all the time, which I would be like, it's like I have to have this weird relationship with something that I like and enjoy and defend it at the same time. It's the worst mental gymnastics ever.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really glad we're bringing this point up.
Yeah, because comics and anime are for white people. That's what I heard growing up.
That's what I heard
people
too.
Things.
I mean, it's weird because my dad was like, why do you like all this they would just say Chinese for everything.
Oh, yeah.
They would say, like, why do you like all this Chinese stuff? It's like, you're not Asian. And I'm like, then where the hell did we come from, Dad? Like, I guess they don't consider, like, when you say Asian for Indian people, they don't consider that to be the case. But then you go to England, that is the case. It's weird. It's all perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird because you like their chemistry. Their chemistry with Captain America and Sam Wilson is really good. They're best of friends. But yeah, it's tropey as fuck because, again, the white guy's being a white savior. Saving everybody. And even if he's like the better white savior that I would prefer,
right,
as opposed to like, air quotes, liberating us from our way of life, which is just a way of saying like, we want to colonize you, essentially. Yeah. And both of us come from colonizing backgrounds.
Yeah. And it's also in a weird place too, because with what's going on, the movements going on, that a lot of these white, quote unquote, white saviors, they're getting them out of here. I mean, because it's like, it's kind of like before, at least for me, it's kind of like before their story is really finished. So I'm not like, I'm not trying to defend some things, but like Captain America is, I mean, I know we're getting the Black Captain America, but it's kind of like Captain America. There's a lot of stories of him as the white hero,
right? That's the thing.
Iron Man, and now they're introducing this new character in this Black Panther movie that they were talking about. This African American female, who's kind of taking over that role.
I know exactly where you're going because my friend brought this up, and he's like, I don't like things being shoehorned. And I never heard that phrase before.
Right.
But then once I had like some time to process that, I'm like, Oh, fuck, he's totally right. Like, it works with Sam Wilson, with Captain America, I think, to a degree.
Right.
Because this is a way that we can potentially do some healing, I feel. I would be interested to hear your side on that. But there's never things like Kamala Khan is the new Miss Marvel.
And I'll defend her because the whole Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel situation in the comics to me kind of got not confusing, but it kind of like Miss Marvel was her character for so long, the white Miss Marvel.
Right, yeah.
But then there was this thing where she did get promoted to Captain Marvel and kind of left that name behind. And I will say, I don't know. I think what Kamala Khan did, she wasn't just a brown version of Carol Danvers.
Yeah, like her powers are completely different.
Completely different powers. Yeah. I think she needed a name.
I think she needed a different name. I think if Miss Marvel was her mentor, I'd be okay with that.
Right.
But like the fact that she's just like, oh, we need to shoehorn a brown person of color, which I'm glad exists. I'm glad that she's part of that. I think her powers are unique to her. That's great. But it's also this double point of she's being like, okay, well, we need a brown character. Fine, we'll token her to the character. We'll just shove this person out and put her there. Yeah. It feels forced, is what I'm saying.
You're right in the movie sense. I think, at least for me, just reading comics, I'll say she did a good job of kind of taking that name and kind of running with it in the comics. Okay. In the comics, at least, and making it her own and kind of being this character who, if you never knew about the previous Miss Marvel, I think people would say that she's Miss Marvel and that's her character. Kind of like, I'm not sure if you're aware of him because he hasn't had a movie, but Blue Beetle.
Yeah, I love Blue Beetle.
There's like a Hispanic version of him.
Jaime Reyes,
yeah. Who has like the armor and the scarab.
So like different. Ted Cord gives
exactly.
Him, like actually,
Ted Cord.
I actually like Blue Beetle quite a bit.
Okay, great. Because like there's a white version of that character who is basically just like a Batman character because he doesn't have like superpowers.
Oh, okay.
But I feel like Jaime Reyes, he took the character Blue Beetle because they both share the same name. Yeah. And he kind of took it, made it his own, and now I think people would say that's the Blue Beetle rather than Ted Cord version.
Ted Cord also has the thing of like he's a golden age superhero, so like they barely remember him as it is.
Yeah.
So that also works in his favor. Like, but again, so like it's this back and forth of we like these like having POC like superheroes, but it's also it feels like we're just kind of getting a token spot of it,
I think the problem becomes when they get introduced to the media, because the media all of a sudden pulls up, the things from the past, like
problematic stuff that today.
Well, just like, oh, that's a white character. Why are you bringing? Like, I don't know. It's a point, and it's kind of hard because I'm on the fence about it. Because like with Spider-Man role, right? Yeah. There's a lot of people I know who they're tired of Spider-Man. Like they're tired of the Peter Parker.
I really am.
But they want the Miles Morales one. Yeah. Where we kind of got with the Spider-Verse, and actually Spider-Verse is one of the better Spider-Man movies reviewed.
It really is.
I think what's going to happen if you do that, bring that Miles into the live action verse, then I think it's going to become this battle of, Spider-Man is kind of like the James Bond argument that was.
Idris Elba?
Yeah, he's a white guy.
I kind of know what you mean, and there's a point that I wanted to bring up that I feel meets into that. There's a possible answer to it. So I rather, instead of reboots, I'm always a fan of have something that the same team works on and have them do a new project, i.e. like The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. Mm-hmm. That team or parts of that team went on and has made a great new show called The Dragon Prince, or the Last Dragon Prince, I think. Yeah. And is so much of the same kind of flavor as The Last Airbender. Yeah, very so much of like there's dark themes, there's
light
themes. There's light themes, there's dark themes, it's very complex characters. No one really is clean except for maybe like one or two characters, but that's because they're children.
Yeah.
But my point being is like, you can definitely feel like heirs of the Airbender that show up there. They even make a goofy boomerang joke in part of the show. But that I'd rather to have than that have like an immortal kind of series move on, and then you just see it like bleeding internally the entire time.
I'm with you 100%. I think what ends up happening when things like that happens, and this isn't against Dragon Prince, because I actually do like that show as well.
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, it doesn't do for the culture what Avatar did.
Yeah, and we could have a whole episode. We need to do a whole episode on them. Like honestly,
on Avatar for sure. But then it's like
not
there's
the James Cameron one.
There are God no. That's the only movie in the history of my life that I walked out on. But fun fact, by the way. But I think there's a section of people. There's another section of nerds who just want things to go on forever.
And I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, look at One Piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a point where I'm like, this is not what it's like. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm sad it's ending.
Yeah.
But after the 4th season, it was starting to lose flavor.
Yeah, everything kind of, fizzles out after a while. You got to give it a break. But yeah, reboots are interesting. I do agree that people should kind of create new art. And I think people do honestly try to create new shows and new characters. But I think it just goes back to, like you said, who's on a sale, who has the more popular name.
Right.
Like, for the life of me, you would think with 3 shitty Fantastic Four movies, you would wonder why Marvel would go with them rather than some other heroes in their catalog. But I think it's just name and recognition.
Right. People, even if you don't read comic books, they know the Fantastic Four.
Oh, yeah. And even, I think there's something about noticeable characters. I think even maybe not, they probably won't know them as well as like Spider-Man or Batman.
No.
But I think there's some characters like Human Torch and maybe The Thing that people subconsciously, like, I've seen them before in my lifetime.
Yeah. Rather
than an obscure character where it was like, they would really have to take a chance.
Creating art is hard.
Yeah.
Creating art is really hard. And I feel like that's but then again, like, I'm always reminded of this one thing this sounds really dumb. I'm always reminded of the thing I've never forgotten. But every story has already been told.
Mm-hmm.
Really, every story that we hear from now on is just an archetype of a story we've already heard in a different lens. And that lens is really what should draw people in. It always surprises me. Like, they're running out of stuff. I'm like, yeah, of course they are.
Yeah.
Because they already have. Like, I look at it like that. So that's why whenever I see something, I'm like, oh, it's another one of these movies. It's another one of that. I'm like, okay, well, it's another one of those told in this lens. Whereas, like, whenever I see superhero movies, I'm like, this is the same lens that has been washed out with the context solution too much at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll still watch it. That's the messed up part.
Because it's something there's elements of it that you really enjoy.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Even if there's certain characters you don't really like or identify with. I think you even take a chance, even with, like, what is it called? Eternals?
Eternals, yeah.
Yeah. So I think people take a chance on it because, certain elements that you like and you just willing to take that chance. And then also too, like we were saying, like, it just also connected now. You hate to be that person that's left out.
Right.
At the end of the day.
You do, and and then the other side of, and specifically you're talking about being a person of color in media. Yeah. I mean, and then it's the other side of, like, the moment they do have a person of color character or anything, everything is about race. Everything is about the struggle. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, I'm not starving. I'm in a good spot economically, but, like, and I see racism, but I also go about my day. I go about my life. And yes, those things are real and present and are clear in all of people of color's lives and whatnot. But we also do other stuff. It's not like we also play video games. We also goof off with our friends, and not every single damn thing is about oppression. Not every single. And it's weird to hear, even though we're talking about it at the same time. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's kind of weird. Because it's like, I know exactly what you're saying. Because then it's like, because there's even like a conversation in like the Black community, at least in my head, where it's like there's certain Black actors that kind of escape it, like unless they choose to go that way. Like Will Smith, for example.
Yeah.
If he never made, Pursuit of Happiness, we would have never seen like Will Smith in a Black struggle.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
He made Wild West.
We saw it kind of in the Fresh. We definitely saw it in the
Fresh Prince, but then like he transcended, like in Wild West, like he was a Black cowboy. Nobody in that movie, at least to my knowledge, addressed the fact that he was like an African American cowboy.
It's really hard to like everything has to be about racism now.
Oh yeah, because there's two examples recently. With this within this genre, like The Boys. I don't know if you watched that show.
I saw the first season.
That was on Amazon.
Yeah.
So like in season 2, like there's a white female superhero who like apparently has been around forever, and apparently she's fucking racist and she kills Black people. And
the Nazi. Yeah. I did hear about her.
So we had that kind of like why? But it slips in. I mean, I'm pretty sure it happened in the comics, but I'm just kind of like, why? Yeah. And then we had the new Watchmen show. That heavily dealt in oppression and racism. Yeah. And it's like, couldn't we just told a story about these superheroes and the cop happened to be a African American woman? Like, did we need the
Do we need everything to be on the nose and overly shown? It's kind of like my point with that I always have, that I found out with Luke Cage, is like, first of all, his name's on the nose. You definitely, he's all about like being chained, being a slave, and being really strong. And like, they empower him, they make him bulletproof. He's indestructible. He teams up with Iron Fist. Again, the same trope of the white guy and the Black sidekick. Though you could argue that they're equal partners. Yeah,
because that was kind of like they were partners.
Their whole shtick as such. Yeah. But like the phrase "Sweet Christmas" was not written by, and there was no Black authors on the team. And that's another thing too. Like, do you hire Black authors and then just arrest them to only write Black characters? So then this just goes. There's so many different levels.
I mean, maybe because it's like they can kind of bring a light into the their backgrounds and kind of make them more relatable characters. I never really want to regulate anybody because I feel like if you have. But that was the good thing about comics, I felt like, because as long as Black people could break, Black and brown people can break into space and write their stories.
You remember us, nice.
but like, I thought that was the interesting about comics that maybe might not be prevalent in like other media, but in comics, you have an author. It could happen to be a white guy, write a Luke Cage story, and it could go on for like 2 or 3 comics, and then you pass it off to the next guy. Yeah. So I think, in comics at least, there was always opportunities for, different people to kind of take the character. And, in comics, characters get, rebooted all the time. Like there's always a new universe. There's always like...
And they throw in the multiverse theory.
Right.
So like that way it protects them in that way.
Yeah.
In terms of being a writer.
Continuum. Yeah.
And there is like... I remember watching... like a background, like there can be times where I feel like if it's done right, it can potentially work. I think the whole thing is if it's done authentically as such, and that's hard to define. It is, because I remember this example from when they redid Battlestar Galactica in like the early 2000s, and one of the characters' names, I never actually saw BSG because it was way too fucking depressing for me, and one of the characters' name was Starbuck, and in the original series, it was done by a man. And when they were casting, they were going to cast a man, but somehow I forgot the actress's name. She's this gorgeous blonde who shows up, and she played the character, and she played it so well. She's so iconic to this day. And I can't speak intelligently on like the show or her characters, but I do remember her standing out in the like episodes that I randomly saw.
Right.
So like there can be times where like different authors, either of gender or ethnic background, that writes a new character, it potentially could do well. Like it potentially could do well, but how you write them is where like it comes into problems sometimes.
But I think sometimes it's like you have to, and this I kind of thought about this because you said a sci-fi show. one sci-fi show I liked was Doctor Who.
That's right. You're a big Whovian.
Yeah. So it was like always a thing. Like it was always super cool. Like he had the time machine. He could go to different times, past, present, future. But it was always kind of like something that I guess I thought about because I was black. Was like if he had a black sidekick, they'd be in trouble. Like you like some of the and I think it. Like they address that, and I think it's like it's so hard not to, that you have to, because it's like even I think more recently there's an episode where like now that the doctor's a woman, I think that even plays a part in one episode where it's like she has a white male as a sidekick, she has a black male as a sidekick, and she has like a I might be wrong, but she might be Indian. She might be Hispanic. Sorry, I don't know.
That's okay.
But they go to the past and meet Harriet Tubman.
Okay.
So not only is like the black dude like getting looks, the Hispanic girl is getting looks, but the doctor is too, because it's like a white woman who's like coming for these white males, and it's like, you know, like we were talking about these other examples where things feel forced, but it's like in this show, you kind of have to, like, if they were just walking around meeting Harriet Tubman and nobody had issues with the like, black sidekicks, how's it going? Exactly. It would be weird as fuck.
It would be. It's also like weird to consider what is considered white, because in certain, depending on the decade you're talking, like in American history, Italian people were not considered white. The Irish weren't considered white. Even Germans were not considered white.
Right.
In some areas, sometimes, in some places, like those are all factors that play into this level of oppression. Yeah, you can't not bring that up when that happens. Like they even bring that up. Now I'm thinking about it, like Legends of Tomorrow talk about that like a bunch when they're time traveling back into different areas.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
like when they go to the 50s and
yeah. They definitely hit on the nose, the women. Because I think Legends,
one of the characters is gay.
Have a lot of gay, and then they have like a lot of female characters within that show.
Yeah.
I think they just do it more in a. I think there's times though they get away with it in a goofy way. Like I know they go.
They do.
You know, to the West quite a bit, and it's never really. They kind of hint at it, but it's never like just really hit on the head. That like.
I think they try to hit on it as much as they can.
Yeah.
And also try to balance it like this is a CW show. Like,
but then like you watch a Flash episode and then it's like you really don't get the sense of race in that show, even though it's like
everyone seems a little too happy-go-lucky.
Right, like Barry's raised by a black family essentially, and it's like
it's all good. Yeah, it's normal.
Like, what's race here?
Yeah.
Then you go watch Black Lightning, and then
it's like everything is race.
Right.
Good God, everything is race. And like, again, like I can't blame him for doing that, but also it's overwhelming at times because it's like everything is about race. I'm like, dude. Like,
for me, it gets.
I know things are bad, but like.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes, as an African American, I try to watch some of these things to kind of get away from like all that, but then it's like,
right.
You know, you got to pull it into the stories.
You do, and like it's for me, it's like definitely talk about it, but like, does it have to be every dinner's conversation? No.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, do you have to talk about it every single day of every minute?
Yeah.
No, because that is overwhelming. And we will go fucking insane if we do, in my fucking opinion.
Absolutely.
Because fuck yeah.
But
wow, that was we are exhausted.
But I mean, we're superhero movies now. I mean, like, you know, they're still coming. You know, and then it's like
we're still gonna watch them.
Right, we're still gonna watch them. I think like the sad thing too is like. There's certain characters they feel like they haven't gotten right that they have to keep revisiting. You know, there's a new Batman. There's going to be a new Superman.
There's I mean, like people are. It's kind of like it just reminded me of this when you were mentioning this. Like the Shang-Chi's coming out in like a week. Yeah. In a week by the time we're recording this episode.
Oh yeah, by the time this gets out, it'll probably be out.
Yeah, it'll probably be out by then. And it's interesting because I you know everyone knows I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan, and I was talking to someone who who's Chinese, and I was like, oh man, you must have some respect for Bruce Lee. And he was like, he's not someone I hang out with anymore because he's just annoying. But he was like, no, like Bruce Lee created more problems. I'm like, what do you mean? But he had a point, because he's like, it showed Chinese people as, at least in his mind, as being kung fu robots who don't have any emotion and just are killing machines. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that has some value. I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And like that's the whole other thing. Like Simu Liu was talking about when he was initially very like ardent, didn't want to do the role because he's like, it's another stereotype of Chinese people kicking ass. Like, and I'm like, oh shit, you got a point there.
But is there a way for like, you know, you bring in Chinese people into this role, and I know it was created during the time where they probably didn't have a voice in the character being created, but is there a way for them to like, now that they're here, they're in this space, to be like, let's do these things, let's incorporate these things into that character?
That's what I'm thinking. Because like if you look back, like even to like the early like Fu Manchu or Shang-Chi drawings, they literally have yellow skin. Like it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I felt that they did really well with Nick Fury. Like he's initially a white dude, and then in later comics he becomes black, and they just switched it and didn't say anything.
The Ultimate Universe.
Universe? Okay.
Yeah, I mean there was like the main comic universe, Nick Fury was white, you know, and then like there was this universe, like alternate universe called the Ultimate Universe, where things were a little bit more serious and more mature, and that's where that black Nick Fury comes from. Okay. And so, you know, comics later, the universes merged and, you know, things changed. So, yeah, you know, that's a little tangent off.
No, that's cool. We need that schooling, though, because you brought up a good point earlier about talking about how comics do a good job of talking about the atmosphere of what's going on. Yeah. So I feel sometimes it's brought out. It's hard to translate anything onto the screen, like I said earlier in the episode. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely bringing you back to our original point for this. Like, yeah, this is the time to change all that. This is the time to rewrite what we have, because like that's the thing. Like, if we're gonna keep on liking comic books, if we're gonna follow the thread that they're doing of constant business, why don't we rewrite the characters? Why don't we do it in a light that has more of a voice from people and everything?
Yeah, because I feel like, at least, you know, going into Shang-Chi, it isn't as celebrated as, at least by the Chinese culture that I've seen, that it's not as celebrated as like Black Panther, you know, because I'm pretty sure Black Panther wasn't written by a black guy.
I thought
it might have.
Ryan Coogler wrote it or something.
Well, yeah, directed the movie.
Oh, you're talking about the character.
But I'm like, the character, the character when he was made for the comic.
Okay.
And that's what I mean by like, is there a way for them to bring in their own culture and elements into it? Because what happened with Black Panther, I'm pretty sure Black Panther Wakanda wasn't created by a black dude. That was probably like some white dude who made up some stories and, you know, in the comics. But then, you know, you put Ryan Coogler in there, you cast all these black actors, and you create, you know, the character essentially.
You eventually just change it.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. That in this place, it's because we're cleaning up messes from laid down before of us, so we have to make the best of it, honestly. And changing that new narrative is incredibly important. So I think, I completely say yes to your question, if that was a question.
Yeah.
That this is the time to change it. And I feel like this could be, everyone pretty much needs their own hero, needs their own person to look up to in their own way. Yeah. And when that person to look up to has been written by someone else who doesn't have their experiences or background, genetics, what have you, history, the cumulative history that comes from your culture, you're going to be a little pissed off.
I think initially, but I don't think you should
write it off completely.
Write it off completely, because I think it's...
Yeah. I can see where their frustration is coming from.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I see the frustration, like, when you told me that Sweet Christmas was, you know, some fluid Jewish white dude, I'm like, yeah, I can see that, but you don't write off Luke Cage.
No, not at all.
You kind of celebrate the fact that he's on screen, and then also, too, it's something different. Like, even if we take race out of it,
I loved the Marvel series that they had.
Right.
Yeah.
The Marvel series, because it's like, all right, so now he's not a traditional costume superhero, but he's doing, like, even if we take race out of it, it's something different.
Yeah.
It's not Spider-Man over and over again. It's not Batman over and over again. You get a new hero.
A new player has entered the field.
Right. Exactly. But at this point, I think, I don't know if we even need, I mean, I guess we do need some new characters, but then it's like, how do we do it in a way that doesn't feel exhausting? Like, doesn't feel like I have to rush to the theater to see it. Or it's just like, how can I get a break from just turning on one streaming service and then there's another one with another?
That's capitalism 101, though. That's the thing. So, like, if that's a conversation that's more like we'd have to upheaval, because that's another thing. Like, capitalism fueled colonialism. It fueled a lot of these things that are causing problems for us now. It just took decades and decades. And not to say that I don't even want to throw out all of capitalism. Like, I think we should. I'm just gonna come out and say I think we should definitely, like, I never agreed with, like, the laissez-faire idea of, like, oh yeah, just do what you want to and everything, it's fine. Like, no, like, keep the market free, do everything you want to. No, we need some rules. We need some rules and regulations. Otherwise, like, you have fucked up situations like 2008 and everything, and whatnot. That is a whole conversation for a different day.
Yeah.
But again, even with that, like, that makes me think, like, of all of these stories. Like, how are we going to do it? How are we continue doing what we love, and with comic books and everything like that? Because we do, even though I'm tired of it, I still like it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like the genre is tired, is getting inflated.
Yes.
I think it's honestly could be even dead in a lot of ways, because you kind of see, like, the numbers, and I mean, there's certain heroes, like Spider-Man is always going to sell, right? Yeah. But then, like, Black Widow, I think it struggled a bit.
It struggled. I would give it a little bit of it too because of COVID. COVID did not help, for sure.
But I think you'll see a lot of these films. I think you'll see I think even Suicide Squad struggled a little bit in theaters. But I think you'll see a lot of that. Like, people were just
losing interest after a while.
Losing interest a little bit.
That's my question too. Like, how is it all going to end? Like, because we're in phase 4 right now, right?
Marvel films.
How is this all going to end? It's been a decade.
But then it's
it's been a decade. How, like, that's a substantial amount of time. More than a decade. It's 13 years now.
Yeah, like phase 1 through 3 to set up Endgame was something incredible and should be celebrated in film and comic history, and I think it will go down as some of the greatest things to happen in cinema.
Yeah. I went to India and it was huge out there. It's huge around the world.
I think Endgame is, like, maybe it's biased, but I think, like, that whole final scene after Hulk snaps his fingers, I think everything after that is, like, cinema gold, and nothing in my mind can ever top it. But to answer your question, where do they go from here? I mean, they gotta lead up to something like that, right? Like, everything has to lead up to another Thanos level
event.
Yeah. And I mean, anything less is going to be Game of Thrones season, whatever, the final season. Like, if it doesn't lead up to if it doesn't lead up to a Thanos
There's event, a lot of Game of Thrones fans are like, Lance, no. There's like, we don't talk about that last season.
Hey, I'm with you, but I mean, if it doesn't do that, then that's where it's gonna go. And then it's like, they're just gonna be this awkward, like with Game of Thrones, it's like this awkward thing where it's like, you'll be like, I'm a Game of Thrones fan, but then it's like, you don't want to talk about anything past a certain season.
Season like 4, some people cut it out to 5. Yeah.
And then it's like, after that, like, what happened? How did it end? We don't talk about how it ended.
It's like it's like the movie that Last Airbender made that we just don't talk about.
Oh yeah, we don't.
It never happened.
Like, and then it's like, that isn't the Last Airbender fault. That was Hollywood. And
that was Hollywood and M. Night Shyamalan not doing any research.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, that's how it is. I mean, will these movies go away? Probably not, because I feel like superheroes are just as part of like, nerd culture is part of pop culture. Just
You think it might go the way of like how I didn't even think about this till now, but like how video games kind of like they were huge in the 80s, and then they were huge, like they were even still really big in the 90s with Nintendo revamping it, and then now it's kind of quieted down. It's still big.
I don't think you should say quieted. I don't think so, because
it's big, but it's not in the limelight anymore.
I think it's big because like
maybe that's my perception of it. I don't know.
Yeah, like because in the 80s because you're probably like 80s, there was arcades, there were these games.
Yep.
But then it's like now we got like a whole competition. Like kids are getting scholarships off to play a video game.
Esports games.
Yeah. So I mean, it's probably, my argument is that video games are probably bigger,
but not in the limelight as such. At least to the general public, though. Like,
I think it is.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I could be wrong.
I don't know if it is, but I think it's like $1 billion industry. You can't ignore it. But
I mean, it's maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's still a $1 billion industry, but maybe it's not criticized as much. I think that's the thing, because when it was in the 80s and 90s, it was openly criticized. It was just like not a taboo thing, but it was like a juvenile thing in a way.
Yeah.
Where now it's like video games are making us money. Like, it's making corporations money.
Yeah.
Like, it's making a lot of money. Making the tech industry is making a lot of money off video games.
Yeah.
And not even just like on the PS4 or Xbox. It's making money off the cell phones, the computers.
Okay.
So maybe it's a thing where, because they're not trying to say it's bad and you shouldn't play them, they cause people to kill people. Which, I mean, that debate's still going on.
It never ends. That's a whole other episode again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that maybe that's the thing that'll happen with superhero movies. Maybe it'll become a thing where we just accept that is a part of movies and
a part of our culture at that.
Yeah. So whereas eventually it'll become to the point where, like how we see a war movie or a cowboy movie, when we see it come out.
Time for a comic book movie.
It's just a film. Yeah, it's like, okay. It's a war movie. Okay. Maybe we'll get to that point where it's just like, superhero movie. Okay.
Cool.
Or maybe it'll die out like cowboy movies, because like that was one thing I think one director said was like, there was like this big boom on cowboy films, westerns.
My parents definitely remember that.
Yeah, it was like western after western after western, and then eventually westerns got killed off. Yeah. So maybe it'll go like that. I think maybe both ways are fair. I don't know.
I mean, I think it'd be definitely something I'm always in the back of my mind whenever I see something, like whenever it ends, like any kind of comic movie. That's always like, how is this going to get wrapped up? How is it all going to like finish? That's always in the back of my mind. Like,
just the saga of it, or
just the saga of all of it. Like, it's such a height right now. Like, when is it going to crash? What's going to happen to it? What's going to be
what's going to happen when it crashes?
Yeah. And will it crash? It seems like it's not going to. So
no, because I think there's always some new character. There's always
a new story to tell.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that it's gotten to the point where a lot of it is starting to feel watered down or isn't as well done anymore. So maybe that'll play a part into it too.
That's what I think too. But I guess we'll have to stick around to find out.
Absolutely. I think we talked long enough.
We did. Yeah, we hit some points we did not expect to talk about, which I'm happy. We did that. And thanks for joining us. Lance, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, take care, guys.
Hey, fan peeps. Thanks for joining. And as always, we appreciate any feedback. You can follow us on our Facebook page, They Need a Hobby, and also at TNAH Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Hopefully one day we'll find a hobby and maybe even be one of the cool kids. Peace. Turned off the AC for the recording, Amitha, so this is for you. We sweating.
You're sweating.
Like we doing it, but we do it for the fans. That's right.